We are live and kicking, and right here we have Edmund McMillen, creator of such games as Gish, Ether, Timefuck, The Binding of Isaac, Meat Boy, and Super Meat Boy. Edmund, welcome to the show. Ish.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get started. At the very beginning, where and when were you born?
Oh, I think I was born in Santa Clara, which is close to Santa Cruz. And I was born in 1980.
1980. Excellent.
March 2nd, which is soon, which is the same date as the first showing of Indie Game the Movie in Santa Cruz. So it's like,
Yay.
it was their birthday gift to me.
Excellent. And where did you grow up?
I grew up here. I grew up in Santa Cruz. I've basically been here since I can remember, and maybe only left for 1 year when we had to move away to Hayward, which was over the hill, which was horrible, but eventually made it back here. And I've lived in Santa Cruz just this whole time, and now I'm permanently here because I have a house here.
Nice. What was your life like as a child?
It was lonely in the best ways.
Yeah.
When I don't look at being alone as a bad thing. I was alone, purposefully alone. I had friends, but I wasn't really keen on hanging out with them, and I liked to play alone. I liked to play with my toys alone. I even had a sister, and I usually just stayed away and just did my own stuff, and I liked working on my own projects, and I liked being left alone. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing at all. It had its downsides, but most of my memories from when I was little were of me, going on adventures by myself out in the woods, or, playing with my Ninja Turtles. I used to set them up and, fight through them with the chosen, playable character, and basically, make my own little game, side-scroller, beat 'em up, like the Turtle arcade game. And that's basically my memories of when I was little. It's kind of what summed up my childhood, and I had a fine time doing whatever I wanted to do by myself.
Yeah, I can sort of relate to that. The games where that sort of feelings come through, they really do resonate with me, because I've had the similar thing where you're sort of spending a lot of time on your own, just exploring your own mind and imagination to create something.
Yeah.
I mean, sticking with that, there seems to be a lot of themes about children and being an imaginative child. In a lot of your works, like Ether, Isaac, you kind of touch it with Carrie Welting and Sirius Species, Coil, and Viviparous Dumpling. Because, Ether and Isaac are, they're young children.
Yeah.
But Carrie Welting and, which one was that? No, that Cherish Walting is also a child, but it's it's an infant, and Peachy is a teenager. Viviparous Dumpling, obviously, it's a fetus. How does it? Oh, Kara.
I don't know. I've been thinking about this more lately because I wasn't completely conscious of the themes of of majority of my games themes being kind of childhood themes, and usually using children or young, protagonists. But I'm realizing it more now and looking back on it. I'm in a situation now where I've kind of now that I have a little money, I'm able to buy things that I want to buy, which I wasn't able to before, and the things that I usually are buying now are all toys from my childhood, and I'm kind of rebuilding, those memories again, and just totally living in this kind of nostalgic world right now. And there's something to that, I think, creatively. When I was little, there was a certain magic in being young and believing in weird stuff that now I can't believe in anymore. I used to believe in ghosts and aliens and monsters and a bunch of weird shit. And when you're little and that stuff's real, the world's just so exciting and magical. And it kind of goes away as you get older and you realize, that stuff isn't real, and there's less and less mystery as you get older. At least for me, I'm hoping it maybe changes, but I don't know. And I think there's something to that where when I'm in a creative mindset and creativity is so, magic, like being creative in art and creativity is the closest thing to magic that you can come. It's not logical. You can't define it, and you can't touch it. You know what I mean? Like it's the closest thing to magic that exists in my life. Pulling it out
of the ether.
Yeah, and it's, I think whenever I go into that frame of mind, I kind of get pushed back into that world when I was little, and I tend to just grab at things and feelings and memories and stuff that, I experienced when I was little. And then it usually just pours through and into whatever I'm working on. I mean, even the stuff that I'm going to be working on with Tommy in the future also has a lot of, I think it's gone a little older. It's matured a little bit, but the themes, there seems to be this underlying theme of childhood, and I always have a theme of birth and the mysteries of birth and death and dying, and anything that's mysterious and undefined and magical to me is usually what comes out when I'm writing, basically.
And we could take a sidetrack here, because it feels like a perfect segue into Coil, where while it's very, very abstract and hard to understand, it does have a very biological life and death theme that's in it. I mean, you've tried to stay a bit more quiet on Coil because it's meant to be so interpretive, and you didn't want to give a set definition to what it was trying to express. But could you shed some light on it to contextualize, what you're trying to say, or some parts of the mechanics that you employed for various stages there?
Yeah, going into Coil, I kind of fell back on the whole, it's meant to be abstract and up to your own interpretation, but really what I was doing was I just didn't completely have the ability I didn't have the vocabulary to say what I wanted to say at that time.
Yeah.
And I was working on it. Like, Coil was like the second kind of more abstract or emotional or whatever you want to define it, more artsy game that I had made, and the first one was Triachnid.
Yep.
And Coil was a very odd project for me and something special that I wanted to do that was loosely based around my mother's obsession with death after the loss of her husband and caring for my grandmother who was terminally ill. And I coupled a very loosely based abstract story around her with a story that had little or nothing to do with the other story, which was the story of an alien type life form going from birth to death. It had to do with the 7 stages of death acceptance, but I think I only had 6. I don't remember. I think I only had 6 though. That was the basis of it, and just kind of went from there. It was just it was the first kind of game like that I worked on, so I was kind of going in blind and trying to just feel around and see what felt right and try to be as honest as I could while making it. And then I made the mistake of saying, when people weren't getting it, because I actually thought people would get it. I didn't think it was that abstract, but I guess it was very abstract. And I kind of made the mistake of saying, it's just left up to interpretation, because I kind of liked that people all had these different interpretations of what they were seeing and experiencing. And I learned from that as well, and I learned how to write in a way, like with Isaac, that was not so literal, not like I'm telling the player something, but more like I'm having a conversation. So it's not just literally left up to your interpretation, but more or less left for the player to fill in the holes.
Yeah.
And kind of make it their own. And I'm realizing more as I make more games like this that how important that is to be able to let the player actually seep into the little pockets that I make. Like, it's important to make these pockets. It's important to not define everything and not over define things like that. Especially mainstream everything. They love to like backstories and really in-depth details on everything, and they kind of get off on it. And that's why sequels add more to the story, and then prequels add more to the story, and so on and so forth. But like, I found that like leaving those things open allows the player to add in their own pieces of the puzzle, and then it gets them more personally involved in what they're doing, and it makes it more special and the experience more unique. So I think that's super important, and I try to put that in everything I do and not overly define everything, so the player gets to use their creativity, in the game's design. Like, it's more of a conversation and less of me just having talking at somebody and telling them things.
Yeah, it's sort of that also came through in Timefuck, where you said later on that it was based off your high school reunion, and a point that you were in with the I forget his name, the programmer for Gish.
Alex.
Yes, out with Alex. But when I played through it the first time around, I've been just dealing with a lot of procrastination issues and the internet.
Yeah.
So it rang clear for me as well for that, but totally unrelated to what you were directly trying to express. And I think that's a really nice part of your art, that you do get to have it touch you in a way that's more special to you than if it was just you saying, this is about this directly. Yeah.
And I mean, and part of it too is me wanting to know myself. Like, it's kind of how I used to write when I did comics. My comics, back then I was, 16, 17, 18 years old. I didn't really know what I was doing. But I had this kind of improvised writing style where I'd write about things without completely knowing what I was talking about. And then later on in life, I'd look back on them and be like, oh, wow, like, this paints a clear picture of where I was at the time and the kind of things that I was thinking about and dealing with. And I try to kind of put that into what I'm working on now. And and with Timefuck, it was like I had all these different feelings and experiences that all revolved around the idea of this invisible box that people put around themselves and say, oh, well, this is my limit, and I can't get out of this comfort zone. Like, this is where I'm going to stay. I'm not going to push myself any further, and I'm just going to stay here and die. And that was the basic story. Like, going to my high school reunion and seeing all these people that were, so many of them were exactly the same people that they were 10 years ago. And it was quite depressing. And there was a lot of people who were very upset with their lives and talking openly about it and crying. I mean, there was a lot of drinking involved, so it was an easy doorway to misery. And it was just like, oh my God, this is horrible. And then after coming back from that, I kind of like sitting in the office with Alex, and we hadn't done anything in forever, and stuff was just kind of going downhill. And I'm thinking to myself, am I one of these people? Like, am I just sitting in my box? Like, am I just in my comfort zone here? Like, what am I doing? Like, am I just going to sit here and pay rent and work with Alex on games that never going to get finished? Or, am I going to grow some balls and try to change my perspective on what I'm doing and, have a greater goal? Yeah. And that was kind of like, making the game was me kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and just kind of almost like tell myself, you need to change your perspective on things because things have grown stale, and you don't want to just accept your fate and die here.
Yeah.
And that's basically what the game was about, through an abstract story, which I had a really good time making. It was one of my better games. I really like that game. I'm thinking about actually re-releasing it on Steam with a few more levels and some extras and stuff like that, and hopefully that actually happens. It'll be a pretty simple thing. It'll probably be like $1 when it comes out, but just like added achievements and maybe some like online level support for level submissions and a few new levels. Just because I want more people to play it, because not many people have, and it's definitely one of my better games.
Just a little side note that you might find interesting. I based part of my dissertation on the world generation for Timefuck. like the way you'd enter the unknown and it would rank the levels and put them in order of difficulty.
Yeah.
So, thanks for that. Whose idea was it, Williams or yours?
That was my idea. I reused it again in Super Meat Boy for Super Meat World.
Yeah.
We used the more in-depth formula.
It's brilliant.
It was one of the things where I was like, how has this not been done? Because it's actually really easy.
Oh yeah, because
it's really easy to do, and it makes endless content for people who like to play, and it was just such a no-brainer, and William was able to do it really quick, so it wasn't an issue at all.
If we go back a little bit to roughly to Coil, you stated that you sort of didn't quite know what you were doing. If we look at films, they were fairly recent, about 100 years old, the medium is at the moment. And there's been development in film schools, and eventually they discovered a language of film which you can sort of look up and do it to yourself with through books. How soon do you think it's going to be with a standard language for game design?
I don't know. I mean, how long did it take for movies?
Unfortunately, I didn't look this up before the interview, but I'll probably put a thingy.
I'd say a little, whatever the amount of time it took for movies, but probably a little less, just because we're in a much more advanced state. And the thing with games, see, I think movies started out art house, right?
Yeah.
Like, started out as like, well, I mean, there's always, I'm sure back then there was a shitload of people who were like, this is not a good medium, this is horrible, whatever.
You can't
the Eberts of that generation. I'm sure there's people out there who said movies aren't art, paintings are art, and that's that. But with games, I think sadly they really did start art housey. Like, if you really look back, not many people realize it, but like a lot of really old games are very like expressive and genuine and show a lot of the character of the designer and a lot of their hang-ups and everything. Like there's a lot of cool things. If you look up, like, there's stuff with Missile Command, like the guy who made Missile Command like was anti-war, and he was commissioned to kind of do this game, and he didn't want it to be a game where you bomb other people, but that's what he was supposed to make. So instead he made a defense game, and he made it like endless, and talked about how he's like haunted by Cold War scare tactic stuff in America back in the 70s, 80s, and that's why he like made it. And there's just stuff that a lot of the early games just speak so honestly, and like Zelda is just this untouchable piece of art to me. It's just such a great game, and Mario is such a great game, and over time, once money got very involved with this, you got these business people who were able to tell the designers, hey, we have statistics that show that this game sells more, and this is why we believe it does, so let's have more of that. And then it just keeps going and going and going, and eventually becomes this very formulaic type system. And it happens with every art form. It happens with pop music. And it just, that's the way it works. And sadly, stuff got lost, and people stopped realizing that what they were doing was art. A lot of people still did, though, and now there's a whole uprising of independent developers who clearly see what they're doing as art, and it's great for the whole thing as an art form. And but yeah, I'm sure it'll take a little while for people to really kind of be like, oh yeah, this is the medium of video games, and this is how we speak through it, and these are the greats, and this is that, and this is that more respectable type award places. Like IGF is all right, but it'd be nice to see like an Oscars of video games. But it's going to take the kids of the generation below me to grow up to about the mid-30s so they can take control over everything, and then that will automatically legitimize video games as art, and it won't even be a thing anymore, and there'll probably be a lot more prestigious type events for all that sort of stuff too. But
Just
Can't get away from the fact that video games are fun, and people think of them as toys. And they are, and they are fun toys, just like movies are kind of fun toys.
It's the comedian's problem that you can tell the honest truth, but because it's funny, they won't take you seriously.
Yeah, that's actually a good analogy.
Two things. Are you aware of the BAFTA Awards?
Slightly.
Okay.
Slightly aware.
And have you...
What does it cover? It covers like almost everything, doesn't it?
Well, there's just a specific video game section at the moment that they actually give out awards similar to they do for films and television.
Yeah, I want to say that Meat Boy might have been nominated, but maybe not. Maybe someone has said that they thought it should have been. I don't know.
We'll look that up. Have you had any interactions with the official sort of games schools, like the University of Teesside or DigiPen?
No. The only school, it's just because I'm local. UCSD has a game design program, and I've, on the odd occasion, gone up there and talked to classes and stuff like that. But haven't really had much association with any other, whatever.
Okay. Going back to themes, how'd you get started with using biology in your work as well? Like, growth of things, fecal matter and whatnot, maggots, decay.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I should have said first, but yeah.
Yeah, I can pinpoint a lot of my themes to different, events in my childhood growing up.
Go ahead.
A lot of my obsession with kind of like alien creatures and a lot of different types of weird looking fleshy creatures, comes from the fact that I lived in Santa Cruz, and I lived on a coast all my whole life, and we have these things called tide pools, which is basically like when the tide goes down, the water recedes, and there's basically rock formations all on the ground, and like there's these little pools of water that have shitloads of different, ocean life in them. Yeah. And I was obsessed with that when I was little. Like, I was all about going to all the minus tides and taking field trips to the beach and to the aquariums that we have here. And when I was little, I wanted to be a marine biologist, and I kind of had this obsession with these. Again, it's the magic thing, like the idea that there's this infinite number of creatures, and they're being discovered every day, and the ocean's just this vast unknown depths that we have no clue what's down there. And that's kind of where the whole different creatures things came from. And then growing up, I had a few run-ins with decaying animals, and it always really interested me. I liked bones and all, that sort of stuff too, and maggots were so gross, and they were by far the grossest thing to me when I was little, and gross in a very interesting way. Like, I'd never want to touch them or get next to them, but they just seemed disgusting. Like, they just seemed like death. And of course, when I was little, I was obsessed with death and afraid that everybody in my family was going to die. I had an experience when I was young. When I was 9, my grandpa died, and it was hugely traumatizing. And growing up, a lot of people who have been very close to me died at fairly young ages. So it just comes through in what I'm doing. I can't avoid the fact that life and death are the biggest things in my life, and I can't not just avoid thinking about them, and mortality is a huge one, and so I have this preoccupation with something being born, something dying, and decaying, kind of whatever else. And then, all the fluid stuff is just stuff that I kind of find interesting, I like...
Oh, that explains the spewer.
Yeah, I don't know, like, I like the things that most people think are gross, which are gross. I find interesting that people think they're gross because they're so common.
Yeah.
Like, everybody gets, but it's so gross. I don't know, it's just interesting
I think
to
it's
me.
An evolutionary thing. Like, to avoid those things because they, generally so. Around things that will cause you harm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's kind of where it all stemmed from, and I like fleshy things. Like, a lot of the characters I make usually are like very fleshy, lots of skin folds, stitched up in places, lots of scars and kind of boils and loose skin. And that all comes from like my obsession with my grandpa when I was little, who was a really big guy. And he had open heart surgery around the time I was born. And growing up with him, I used to always ask to see his scars. And he had this giant scar down his chest, and then he had these holes, which I called the eyes. It looked like he had like kind of a face on his chest. And I'd always asked to see him, and I was just obsessed with the idea of him being like this, almost like a zombie, like this monster, like a Frankenstein type guy. And I loved him so much, and he was just such a huge person to me, and he was such a larger than life type person. And I used to like go around on his shoulders, and he had like skin tags on his neck that I used to play with. And, I mean, a lot of the elements of who he was seemed kind of gross, but, like, to me, they were so cool. And I kind of, like, idolized those things. And, like, they just come through in what I do still, because it still seems so cool. Because he was so cool.
Moving on to a bit less personal things for now. What games did you play and particularly enjoy when you were growing up?
I had an Atari when I was about 5, and I played Jungle Hunt a lot. I played Jungle Hunt, Asteroids, this game called Hero, and Pac-Man. I liked Hero a lot, but I think it was mostly because on the box it looked really cool, and the box kind of showed you what you should be seeing in the game. Because like a lot of the memories that I have, they were so, from when I was, I don't know how long ago, like 25 years ago. I remember it kind of better. I remember it looking a lot better and the graphics being pretty cool and bats flying around and snakes and stuff, because that was what's on the box, and they kind of like gave you this little infographic of what everything's supposed to look like in the game on the cover. And I kind of imposed those things over, and I think that's why I kind of I don't think the game was actually that good. It was actually pretty weird, if I can remember correctly. You like go around and try to save somebody at the bottom of a pit, and you're constantly falling. But yeah, and then I was like the last kid on my block to get a Nintendo, so I used to have to go and play Nintendo at my friends' houses and find ways to like call in sick and go over to their houses. Like I'd break into one of my friends' houses, or just walk into their houses even if they weren't home and start playing games. And I had an obsession with Castlevania, Zelda, and Mario 2, which were my favorite games. And when I turned 9, I finally got a Nintendo for my birthday, and that's like, I was all about Zelda. That was like a game I was completely obsessed with.
Well, I guess it sort of really reflected your experiences while you were out and exploring in the woods and whatnot.
Yeah, it totally did. I didn't know it. I didn't even realize it until, a few years ago. But yeah, like, it encompasses, like, everything that's special kind of about my childhood, at least. And it really embodied that for me, which is why I was obsessed with it. Like, going in back then without any kind of strategy guide and hearing just rumors about things from friends on the street, because nobody had beaten it yet when I was playing it, it was totally magical. Like, that game was unstoppably magical. And it kind of sucks in a way, because I know that not many people, unless they have, the ability to not look online and find answers for questions, there was a certain amount of magic that went into not knowing about a game and experiencing it all by yourself and not being able to look online and see where they need to go next. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I was really trying to recreate that with Isaac. And I know that there's wikis all over the place that explain every little detail, but I'd like to think that most people don't go in looking at the wiki first, and they can kind of experiencing it how it was intended as a mysterious type game where you explore, and it seems endless. It seems endless when you're not spoiled to the limitations of the game, and that's what I loved about Zelda. It seems like it went on forever, and then when I finally beat it, and it unlocks the second quest, which is just even more random and crazy. And I could never beat that, but that was just crazy. I love that game.
Yeah, that does crop up with the Binding of Isaac, where you're trying to desperately not go on the wiki and eat through the game as quickly as you can, so you can reconfirm what you've kind of tried to figure it out. Like, you pick up Mom's knife and you kind of understand what's going on, so you try it out, and then afterwards I'm just salivating, going to the wiki, trying to see what it does.
Yeah.
For definite. But then that sort of bites me afterwards, because I've got about, unfortunately, 160 plus hours on Steam at the moment. And I'm wondering if I hadn't looked them up on the wiki after I found them, would it still be magical? Because at the moment it's become a bit more formulaic, where, okay, so I pick up this, and then I know this does that, and I know where the secret room is, so I have to find a bomb to put it there and get, it's a more optimized thing. Which kind of ruins the mood that you have when you first started the game, where you can really roleplay as Isaac, because you don't know what the hell's going on and you're stumbling around in the dark the same way he is.
Yeah, I think it's okay, though, after that many hours. I think it's okay to fall into a formula after that amount of time, but, I mean, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I started working on the expansion, which is getting crazier and crazier, and I hope it adds enough for people who really got into the game to play more. I mean, at the very least, it's going to have so many more goals for you, so more reasons to get through it. And I'd like to think that it's going to recreate. I mean, the focus of the expansion really is for the fans who've experienced it, and it's there for more mystery, like with a focus on lots of secrets. Like, nobody found the I Am Error room for quite a while. Like, a lot of people found it, but didn't really screenshot it because it wasn't fully, like, nobody was communicating enough, at least on the wiki. So it was a bit of a mystery, and I remember there was a mystery for a few days on what the Bible did and even how to get it, which was really cool to watch and unfold. So there's going to be more of a focus on that, where there's going to be quite a few of those elements that are going to be very hard to get to right away, and it'll take a while, I think, for people to find and fully explore enough to understand how they got them and what they do and why they're useful. And I think there should be enough there for a lot of people to really get their $3 worth.
Yeah. Few things. Unfortunately for you, dude, I ended up finding the I Am Error room on, like, my third playthrough when I had teleport. It was just like.
But did you know exactly, like, well, I guess if you had the teleporter, you're gonna find it.
Yeah, just press teleport. It might have been the second time, and it just plopped me down in front of Mr. T. I'm like, aha, I am error.
Yeah.
Speaking of fans, did you always intend for The Binding of Isaac to have the amount of fan service it does? I mean, there's tiebacks to Gish, and the arcade's covered in, like, posters for Ether, and the way Isaac's appearance changes also harkens back to the dead baby dress-ups he used to do. Or did you just?
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of self-reference, I guess. There's probably a better word for that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, going into Isaac, I was at a completely unique place in my life where it was like, all right, I just got finished with a game I completely love, but the end of development was hell, the release was hell, and in a lot of ways it made me scared to work in games a bit again. My life was completely changed, financially it was night and day, and I basically had so much freedom to do whatever I wanted, and Tommy went to take a vacation, and I wanted to take a vacation too, and I decided I wanted to make a game. A little quick game. And it was just that setting, like, that basic setting for Isaac was like, I didn't set out to make a game that was going to make any money. I didn't set out to make a game that was going to be for the fans. I didn't set out, I set out to have fun. Like, quite literally, I wanted to make a game in a week with a friend online and just have fun doing it, and that was the goal. And it just kind of morphed into this game that I was very unsure of, and I was going to put it out for free for a very long time, and then I started showing it to different developers, and they were like, "You'd be crazy not to charge for this. You should charge $15 for this." And I'm like, "No, like, it feels wrong. Like, I only spent 3 months on it. I'll put it out for $5 because I don't think many people will want to play it, and maybe the $5 price tag will get more people on board, and we'll just see what happens." But I was quite sure that, like, it wasn't going to be. My highest hopes was that it would be like a midnight movie type video game. Like, a handful of people would be hailing it as a cult classic video game that was very obscure and them and their friends liked. And that was basically my highest hope for the game. I really didn't, like, when I say I didn't expect Meat Boy to do that well, a part of me did, because I thought it was really good, and I put my, blood, sweat, and tears into it. Like, I tried my hardest, so it better do well. Like, if it doesn't do well, then my hardest isn't good enough and I should quit. But with Isaac, it was just like, I really didn't expect it to do well at all, because this was just an unbridled effort of me to just try to have fun making a game that I thought I'd like, and this is what came out, and just so happens a lot of people seem to like it. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the fact that people knew me from Super Meat Boy, and that helped sales, without a doubt. But it's pretty crazy to see so many fans. Like, it's to the point now where people didn't know that I'm involved with Meat Boy and know me from Isaac.
Oh, wow.
Which is something I'd never think would happen, but it's happened, a few times. And people were like, "Oh, you made Super Meat Boy?" I just assumed that you put Meat Boy in there because Meat Boy had a lot of indie games in it.
Yeah. But at what point did you sort of say, let's put Steven in here? That'll be awesome. Or what?
It was about when I sent it to Steven. I said, "Would you want to sell this? Do you think people will buy this?" And they said yes. And that was it. And I was like, "Oh, what do you think about a $5 price tag?" They said, "Oh, that's fine." That was around the same time as like Dungeons of Dreadmore, which was a roguelike that was $5, came out, and it seemed to do really well on Steam, and so Steam was all about it. And I thought, all right, well, the hell not.
Sorry, I think you misheard me. Like, when did you decide to put Steven in the game?
Oh, Steven.
Yeah,
I thought you said
Gish
Steven.
and Meat Boy and the posters and the arcade and Chad, when did you decide to put the fan service in? Where people like me would be like, "Oh wow, I remember this. It's from Host," or all these things.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. But I guess I don't know. I really don't have a good answer for that. I was just kind of like, I think, what it was? It was probably so many people expected me to put, like, when they heard I was working on a new game, one of the most common questions I got is, "Are you going to put a bunch of indie characters in it like you did in Meat Boy?" Mm-hmm. And part of me was like, no, I don't want to do that again, because it just doesn't seem appropriate for this. Like, it seemed very appropriate for Meat Boy because I was referencing, video games, like video game design. Like,
yeah. Meat
Boy was about game design. Meat Boy was about my experience with video games and my experience with independent games. That's why I put those characters in there. Yeah. With Isaac, it just didn't seem to make sense. So it was like, a lot of people were like, "Why didn't you put more of your characters in Meat Boy?" And I just, for the same reason, it just didn't seem appropriate. And I kind of wanted to do that, though. Like, I kind of wanted to reference my past a bit. And it was more for me than for anybody else. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I like that whole referencing myself without literally referencing myself, like putting myself in the game or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just cool. I got to do a lot of. Yeah, I don't know. It was in the same way people were like, "Oh, I unlocked Fly Ranch and Super Meat Boy. I'm gonna go look that game up because I don't know what it is. It seems obscure." Like, I thought it'd be really awesome for people to, unlock Little Steven, and go, "What the fuck's that?" and then look it up and play the game. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. Do you end up spending much time with Clay Butler? And if you don't, would you like to spend more time with them? This is, I don't know if you want to frame it or if I should.
If you want to say who he is, I can say who he is.
It would be better for me.
Okay. Yeah, Clay. Clay is the reason why I wanted to be independent. Clay was an independent artist that came in my freshman year in high school to talk to our class. I don't even remember what the fuck class it was. Like, I don't remember.
Well,
I was just
like
bored that day.
A jobs thing or an art thing.
I don't. Yeah, I wanna say it was that, but like, I don't know. It doesn't seem to make sense because I don't remember there being anything like that. But it must have been something like that. But yeah, he came in and talked to the class, and he was an independent comic artist who had a public access show and like syndicated, comic strip and a bunch of different newspapers, and it's called Sidewalk Bubblegum, and he had like animation and Sick and Twisted Festival of Animation, and I thought he was really cool, and I like stayed through recess after everybody left. Like I stayed talking to him because I wanted to do that. Like at that moment, I realized that I wanted to be this guy. I wanted to have this guy's life. Like he seemed so happy, and this is exactly what I wanted to do. And I didn't know how I wanted to do it. I just knew I wanted to be independent. And it just seemed so rewarding what he was doing, even though he wasn't really wealthy. And I kind of followed him around, and like through another teacher, I was able to like get a job as a cameraman for his show on public access. And he came over to my house once to because I started doing comics because I kind of was totally emulating him, and I had got his comic book compilation, and I was trying to draw like him, and had him come over, and he said he really liked my stuff, and kind of gave me the energy to keep making comics, and I started making more and more and more comics. And then time passed, and I started doing my own thing for a while, and then we later synced up again down the road when I had lost my job as an animal control officer, and I needed money, and I kind of contacted him and said, because he was a freelance artist as well, and asked if he could like show me the ropes, and he helped me like make my own portfolio website, and he's just basically been my mentor for forever. And
do you still meet regularly?
Yeah, I see him maybe once every 3 months just around town, and I talk to him online once a month probably. I think the last time I met him in person was a couple months ago, and he'll be coming to the premiere hopefully, which will be awesome. But yeah, he's just kind of always been there and showed me the ropes for everything and got me work when I had no money, and he was always he always had my back and just taught me basically everything I needed to know about being independent and, trying to live comfortably while being so poor.
When did you discover Astrosphere?
I discovered them through Mr. Bungle. The writer and bassist for Stratosphere was the bassist on tour for Mr. Bungle. And
I don't know. Smoleans did that.
Yeah. And he, a lot of Mr. Bungle guys, Secret Chiefs guys, were local to Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
And they played around here. And I'm trying to think of exactly how it happened, but we're working on Gish, and we were listening to a lot of Mr. Bungle. We even put a Mr. Bungle reference in the game.
It's a secret! Don't tell anybody!
Yeah. And, that's so obscure that, no one even...
Oh, come on, man. I can't remember which album it's on, but Mr. Bungle isn't that far underground. Compared to Secret...
Yeah, it's off their second album. Probably, arguably one of their best, or the most well-known. But, how the fuck did we find out? I don't know.
I know he did the music for Gish.
Yeah, he came over one day and he was like, hey, and he just started talking about, some crazy shit. He was, talking about how he got a copy of the the Beach Boys Lost album, and he's listening to it, and he loved it so much, and we're talking to him about the game, and he ended up doing not only the music, but also the sound effects, most of the sound effects anyway, for Gish. We ended up using a lot of tracks that were slightly modified off Buck Fever, I think maybe 2 of them.
Yeah, Feed Your Mama's Meter. I got so pissed that I couldn't find a version of that song that's just like the version that's used in Gish.
Yeah, because that part's cut out when it goes crazy. But yeah, and he did some custom music as well. It was good. It was pretty awesome. And then he just disappeared. Like I remember we owed him money and we were trying to get a hold of him and we could never find him.
Oh man! So you could have helped fund Pals of Mirrors when they needed it.
We were trying seriously. Well, I mean, it wasn't much money. I mean, back then we were making barely anything, but it was maybe $100. But either way, it was money, and I remember going trying to contact him and just never being able to get a hold of him, and that was basically it. I mean, shortly after Gish came out, the company imploded.
I know what that's like. I've been through it, man. It's not cool.
It's common. It's surprisingly common.
This leads us really nicely to our next question. Explain your feelings towards Santa Cruz.
My feelings towards Santa Cruz. I have a love-hate relationship with Santa Cruz. Mostly love. I love it for the same reasons, like I said before, like nostalgic reasons. Like this, Santa Cruz feels like my childhood. All my memories are here, so that's why I love it so much. And I've been other places, and I know how good it is. Like, there's a reason why it's like the second most expensive place to live in California, in the United States, period.
Did not know that.
It's fucking expensive here. It's on par with like San Francisco, which is stupid because San Francisco is retardedly expensive.
And it's also in California as well.
Yep. New York is more expensive, but Santa Cruz is still pretty ridiculous. But yeah, growing up here, I had a lot of really great teachers. One of which I'm trying to track down now. I had a second grade teacher who was just really awesome. I mean, I was a hard kid to deal with and had a hard time paying attention and everything else, and I got in trouble a lot. And I had a second grade teacher named Tom Takano who came up with this really cool positive reinforcement plan for me where, instead of sending me I was getting sent to the principal's office every day. Every day I would do something and I would end up in the principal's office. And if I didn't, I was faking sick to go home because I didn't want to be there either way. And it was probably me trying to get out of it. That's why I was probably getting in trouble. But he came up with this formula of, instead of negative reinforcement of punishing me, he would reward me with just a piece of paper that said Edmund had a good day on it with, a little stamp.
Dude, I think I remember that.
I collected those.
Were they in the This Is a Cry for Help CD?
Yeah, I think they were. Because I found them they were all in the same box that my grandma saved. The same box of my drawings from them. And that's when I drew all that stuff. It was all from his class. And, that was, looking back, I had no fucking clue. I was a little kid and I thought I was just being rewarded and I got to show my mom every day, I had a good day, look. Sometimes it was a good day or a spectacular day. But, it was great, and it made me feel really good about myself, and that's why I'm trying to find him just to thank him. After that, of course, I still had bad experiences with teachers, but there were quite a few random teachers that were just really awesome. Like I said, Clay was just a great, very stereotypically Santa Cruz guy here, total surfer, kind of hippie guy.
Yeah.
I had very, liberal hippie teachers. I had a teacher in high school that gave me my own little show in the hall, and a lot of my art was really questionable. I had a giant painting of a vagina with a hand bursting out of it.
That's totally not repeated in your later work.
he put it in the hallway, and then when the principal told him to take it down, he said he lost the key. And I just thought that was the fucking coolest guy ever. His name was Mr. Thomas. He was really cool. And then I had a teacher, computer graphics teacher, Miss Williams, who would actually let me use her copy machine, which she wasn't supposed to make my comics. And that's how I was able to make my comics, because I didn't have any money in high school.
The first 50 batches of This Is a Cry for Help, right?
Actually, the first of that, as well as Build the Lower Intestine, which was the very first comic I ever printed, which was like full size. And I printed it all in her. It was, just looking back, like I'm pretty surprised at how cool these teachers were to me. And of course I had horrible teachers too, but those three teachers were really cool, and I have to give it up to Santa Cruz for that, because one of the reasons why they were cool is because they're so open-minded and liberal, and Santa Cruz is like that. Sadly, the downsides of Santa Cruz is the fact that majority, the illusion of an artistic, artsy scene here is bullshit. It's complete bullshit. It's garbage. Nobody supports artists here. There's even like Open Studio and whatever else. It's got this total illusion of a very artsy, Portland-esque type environment when it's all front and nobody supports it. And like the best example would be like, so Indie Game the movie got into Sundance and won. Before it even won, Tommy, who lived in North Carolina, was contacted like by like 5 different newspapers, just like wanting to interview him because somebody from North Carolina was involved in, a Sundance documentary. And then after he won, he got contacted by more and everybody else, and then he got contacted by more people, and I never got contacted by anybody. So it's premiering here. This is the first stop for it. And I'm going around emailing like all local newspapers because nobody's contacting me and saying, it's an award-winning Sundance documentary. It's, a third of the movie is featured in, here, like it's Santa Cruz based. It's got a Santa Cruz local in it, and it's a big deal. And I got like no response at all from anybody except for like one guy who's like pulling for me, who writes for the Sentinel, who's just like will feed in little bits and pieces here and there. And I actually had to physically go out, make flyers. It was kind of fun, but put up the flyers everywhere and go physically down to all the newspapers and talk to them in person. And after all that, I only got one paper who was willing to write about it. And the paper comes out the day before the show. So it's like, okay.
Is that really good or really bad timing? Do you reckon?
It's bad. It's not a 1-day paper. It's a 7-day paper. So the majority of people who read it will be looking into the past, and so it's just funny. That's kind of how it goes. And like my wife is an artist as well, and like she does really awesome stuff. And there was a married couple from New York that came here and were like trying to start up this, again, like Portland-esque little get-together of different artists to sell their wares downtown Santa Cruz. And they put on this show. It was really awesome. It was Danielle's first show. And she almost sold out everything. She just dominated it. It was quite awesome. And then they had a second show, and she dominated that as well. And it turns out that she was the only one selling anything. And the show was canceled. And nothing else remotely like it here. So, like, there's just not a lot of people doing cool art, and there's not a lot of people supporting on cool art or any kind of new art. The majority of art that happens here is like, a 60-year-old photographer and a guy who makes pots or what, I don't know. But it's also a bit tainted by UCSC, which is a bunch of very, it's cool to be liberal, but it's a bit much to be so liberal that like you're trying to out-liberal the liberals. It just gets fucking annoying. And I lived with a bunch of college kids. Me and my wife both did, in like a dorm type situation because we couldn't afford to. We were renting a room. It was cool, and a lot of people there were pretty cool too. I made a lot of good friends. But Jesus Christ, man, you like try to cook a meal and you've got these vegans who are yelling at you for killing animals and telling you about how all the animals are treated, and they're all lesbians, and then, fast forward 3 years, they're all married to guys, and they're eating meat. That kind of sums up a large portion of Santa Cruz. Like, we had an Occupy Santa Cruz movement here. It lasted about a week. And now there's one guy. It's just, I'm not even lying. It's one guy. There's one guy who's protesting out there now, and people honk at him. That's basically it. I don't know. It's just... It's a funny town. I mean, I both love it and hate it. It's a great, great town. The weather's great. It's always super mild, never too hot, never too cold. You got the beach, you got the forest, you got tons of animals, and it's very lush. People are usually extremely nice. It's not like overly religious in any way. It's very liberal, but you got a bunch of a bit too liberal hippies that are quite annoying, and everything else is fake.
So, could you tell us a bit about how you met Danielle, your wife, and how your life together has been? I mean, they always say that behind every successful man there's a strong woman, just cleaning up after his mess.
It's very true. And the cool thing is in the movie she's featured pretty prominently, and you kind of get to see how much of a support she is. I met her when I worked at Blockbuster. I worked with her sister. I was 19 and she was 14. And I didn't know she was that young. She looked a lot older. And I thought she worked there. And I think I hit on her a bit, and her sister was like, "Don't hit her on her, she's only 14. And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus." But then a couple weeks passed, and her sister's like, she's new to the area, she doesn't really know anybody here, and it's her 15th birthday. You want to, take her out for me? And I'm like, sure. And I went on a few dates with her, and I totally fell in love with her. And I've been with her since. We've been together for a long time. But yeah, we've been through great times and horrible fucking times and all the ups and downs, but she's always been there to support me, and I've always been there to support her. Through Gish development, actually. It was around the time where I lost my job, and we were living in that house, the dorm situation with the 9 other people. And I was basically like, I want to try to do art for a living and not just give up and work a real job. And she said that she would support me, and she was working as a dog groomer, and she was able to make enough to pay the rent. So for 6 months, it was around the time where I got a job at Chronic Logic, and I pitched the idea for Gish. And for the 6 months of development, she was the one paying all the bills, because I wasn't making any money at all. And then, 6 years later or whatever, I was able to do the same for her when, I think it was in 2008, when I did a shitload of games, and actually made pretty good money. And pretty good money then was like $35,000. That was really good.
It's 11 games.
11?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a productive year. But yeah, they were all sponsored well, and I was well known enough to kind of get by, and it was the same year that I printed the CD of my work, and
which I have a copy of.
Yeah, I kind of got my name out there a bit, and that was like the pivotal year for me. And I was able to make so much then that I asked her to quit her job, which she was working with disabled kids, autistic kids. She was a one-on-one aide. And she loved the job, but also hated it. Parents are quite hard to deal with. For a lot of disabled kids, they already have it hard, and they don't sugarcoat it for you when they're having a bad day, and they usually will take it out on the person who's trying to help. And she kind of had enough, and I asked her to just quit and see if she could just focus on her art. And she actually, within a year, was able to make as much as she was making doing that job. It was for Easter seals, off of just her plush work online. She sold thousands of plush stuff, sculptures, and eventually started doing my characters as well, which she still does to this day.
Yeah.
And makes a pretty damn good living off of it. She's got a lot of money to buy shoes with now. But it was a cool give and take, and she was definitely the main reason I didn't completely lose my shit when working on Nikoi. She was the one that would talk me off the roof every night when I would say I wanted to give up because it was too hard.
I take it the part about there was a video you showed of the studio for Team Meat, and halfway through, towards the end, you sort of left the house and you started zapping bugs.
Yeah.
I take it that's the moment where she steps in and helps you out. And also, are you finding that development is harder now that you don't have flies outside your house to zap so easily?
I'm thinking now that the flies were sapping my energy. Yeah, it's better. It's better to not have all those bugs and stuff outside of my house. Oh man, looking back at that place, I mean, it looks messy in the video for sure because it was chaotic, so total chaos. Like when I'm in full development mode, I'm neglecting everything else.
Yeah.
And everything is just a horrible mess. And but not that we could control this. The house that we were living in was falling apart, and quite literally, a year prior, the toilet was caving in to the downstairs neighbors, and like they had to redo everything, and it was like infested with black mold, and we were sick a lot, and that house was horrible. And it's great to not be there anymore and actually have a house that's insulated and not full of mold.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, we were sick a lot. We were always wondering, like, why are we sick all the time? It's like because we basically don't have windows and there's mold everywhere.
Oh man, I've lived in a bad place. Not that bad, but it does get to you after a while.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, one of the key parts to most of your projects is collaboration. How do you choose musicians and programmers to help bring your projects to reality?
They're usually always friends. Usually I'll make a friend, and really, like, making a game is kind of like playing a game. I mean, most developers, I think, will tell you that. Like, making a game is fun because it really is like playing a game. You're experiencing it in a very similar way where you're learning the mechanics and teaching yourself as you go. And working with somebody else is a very social experience to me, and I'm not that social, obviously. And so it's definitely something I enjoy a lot. And when I'm working with somebody I really like, it's even better. And I think it comes through in the game. And the three people I get along with the most are Tommy, number one, Florian, and Danny. And I make my best work with them. And, you can look back at some of the titles that I've worked with people I didn't really get along with, like Blast Miner, which was a disaster, Serious P-Shy, which I thought was a failure, which I was just fighting with the guy that I was working with. That was kind of when our relationship went sour, and all the unfinished products that I made when I was working with Alex, which never saw the light of day. It's important for me to get along with the person that I'm working with and be friends with them, and it's this kind of give and take. Like, not only do I, of course, need somebody else there to program because I don't program, but I also need somebody there to validate what I'm doing, period. Like, I'm not... It wasn't healthy when I was making comics by myself in my room, because I was completely isolated and losing my mind. Like, when you're obsessively creative, you barely sleep, your ideas haunt you. You know, it's sometimes more of a negative than a positive. Yeah. And if there's nobody there to, like, kind of put you in check, and make sure that you realize that this is real and not fiction, not made up in my head, it's just more healthy that way. Being able to talk to
the things that you're creating at that time, or what's real, not fiction?
Like, you lose track of what you're doing. Like when I was making comics, I didn't know if what I was doing was good. I had nobody else there to share with it. Like, I couldn't talk to somebody about this. Like, I couldn't discuss, hey, does this look good? Like, I think there's a reason why a lot of comic artists work with other people too. It's like any kind of creative field, when you isolate, you kind of lose your shit. Like, you start to question, am I just telling myself this is good? Like, I have no outside response to anything I'm doing, so I could just be lying to myself.
Yeah.
And then it's to just go into this, like, circular, or no more like a spiral of of like, oh, well, that sucks. I guess this sucks. Yeah, everything sucks. Why am I doing this? Like, but the ideas are still there, and you got to get them out. But then you start thinking less and less of your work. And having somebody else there to say something is good, something is bad, something's funny, something's not funny, and then giving input as well, helps you learn. Like, it took me quite a few years, and just, really, like Meat Boy and some of my later games, learning how important it is to see things from different perspectives, as far as like what I make isn't going to be perceived the same way from somebody else, and I need to know that. I need to understand how a lot of people view and play and experience things differently in order to become a better designer. Yeah. And working with other people, you get that kind of direct input, like right away from somebody else. I mean, I don't know. I mean, people just kind of fall out of the sky. You make a friend online, and they just happen to be a programmer. Like the first programmer that I ever worked with, Calder, was just a fan of my Dead Baby Dress Up games. And he was a programmer and asked if I wanted to make a game. And that was basically it. And that's how Florian appeared too. Like, Florian was a giant fan of Gish, and he really liked physics-based games, and he started making up his own stuff in Flash. And he was a really young kid. I think he was like 16 then. And he just IM'd me, and we started talking and decided to make Triachnid. And that's just kind of how it goes. I definitely need to work with people, not only for my own sanity, because it's just not fun if I'm not. I could never do this by myself, and I never would want to. Like, I don't like working alone. I've been alone for a long time in my head, and it's not the safest place to be all the time.
I certainly know where you're coming from. Do you feel that comes from being a skeptic? Like, you're skeptical of other things, so you tend to be skeptical of yourself? You think that I need some proof to know if I'm, doing what I can, or am I just kidding myself? Like, I went through that a lot when I was starting out programming. Do you think it's because, of skepticism, or am I thinking about it wrong?
I don't know. I mean, it could just be... Like, I feel like I'm a confident person, but I'm not, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm confident. I feel like I know I'm good at what I do, and I know I can do it. But I can't shake the other side of me that tells me that I don't know what I'm doing, because from experience, I'm always wrong. Like, with time, you're always wrong, which is great. It's how you learn, right? Like, you need to learn how to get better, and in order to get better, you need to make mistakes, and nobody's perfect, so you're always going to make mistakes and learn. But I guess it's just this part of me that always doubts what I'm doing, and I can't shake it. And it's healthy. I think it's healthy for growth, because it means that you want to push yourself. Because there was a time after growing up, you always go through these pockets of self-doubt, and then overly confident. Like, really young, like, I'm the best. I can't get any better. Like, I'm fucking amazing. There's been many times mostly when I was very young, that I actually thought that. And of course I look back and think, what a fucking fool. Like, but you can't get away from that. There are definitely pockets of insane confidence. And in 2005, when Gish won the grand prize at the IGF, it wasn't necessarily this bout of confidence, but more or less, how the fuck could I ever outdo this? What's the point? Like, what's the point in continuing to make games, because I'm never going to win the IGF again, and there's nothing bigger than the IGF. Well, then, there's nothing bigger than the IGF, and, how can I outdo Gish? And I fell into this complete pocket of depression of, like, feeling like, well, that's my limitation, because that's as good as I'm as good as I'm going to get, and it's kind of like there's a confidence in that was a bit too dangerous, like the confidence in thinking that I'm the best at what I can be at that point in time, when really I didn't even know what I was doing. But it took me like 2 years of being pretty depressed about it. It sounds weird. Like, I was very depressed about winning the IGF, because it put me into a space where I had achieved what I believed to be the biggest goal that I could possibly set for myself, and how could I go anywhere from there? And I I was depressed for a while until I was able to like change my perspective and switch gears a bit and be less about, making a game and getting it into the IGF and winning, and more about pushing myself as an artist and growing. And that was how I was able to kind of change focus and focus on growth, personal growth. But I think it's just really easy to fall into like a little pocket of possibly overly self-confidence where you feel like, I'm not going to get any better. I see a lot of artists do that. Like, I see a lot of artists get really popular, and then for like the next 10 years, their style doesn't change, and they don't seem to get any better.
Yeah,
because they get so confident because so many people are telling them how great they are, and like, it just doesn't seem like they grow. So I think it's good to have those. Very good. I think it's crucial to have self-doubt and question yourself to the point of convincing yourself you're not that good, because you're not. And it's the only way to get better is to realize that you're really not that good. Because I know I'm not that good. Like, I know I can get better, and I hope to get amazingly good one day. But I'm not there yet. And I have a ways to go, but that's what's fun about it, is knowing that. And knowing that, there's not a week that goes by where I don't have an epiphany about some aspect of game design that makes me a better designer. And, 10 years from now, I can only imagine that I have a really, really good grasp on game design, and I might be able to make something way better than anything I've ever done before. And that's what I get to look forward to, instead of feeling like I've peaked.
This is an interesting point to ask a question that one of my friends suggested. At which point did you, and this is, I'll amend it a little bit. At which point did you think you've made it as a games designer, or has that moment not arrived yet? Just in terms of either.
There's different pockets. There's different peaks. Like if you would have asked me that, in 2006, I would have told you that I peaked and I'd made it with Gish.
Yeah.
I made it with Gish, and then I would have told you again when Gish went on Steam and actually started making money, because it wasn't really making money before, and I would say, that's when I've made it. When my CD came out, that's when I made it. When Super Meat Boy came out, that's when I made it. When Indie Game the Movie was made, is now coming out, that's when I made it.
What about as a craftsperson? Like, which game do you think you sort of shine brightest?
Well, the game I shine brightest is, without a doubt, Super Meat Boy. Like, Super Meat Boy is the culmination of everything I've learned. Like, it encompasses everything. And it's my biggest achievement, personally. And even going further than just the game itself, it was just a very grueling test of, perseverance and doing something that seemed impossible. Really, that's what Indie Game the Movie is about. It's about that story. Like, going through all the shit that we went through and coming out the other side alive makes me feel pretty good and pretty confident about everything. It makes me feel like I've, did something great. But I'd hope that I'm able to say that again. I don't feel like, at this point, I've made it. I feel like I've made it financially.
Yeah.
Which was never a really big goal. It was never even on my list of things that I needed. Like, I was self-sufficient in 2008, and from then on, I would be fine. I'd still be poor, but I'd be self-sufficient, and I would be able to take care of myself and my wife, and it was, not a thing. I'd be able to live comfortably. But now suddenly I've made it financially. That, means a few different things. It means being able to have health insurance, and means being able to fund my own projects and not have to worry about ever doing freelance work again or consignment or anything, that I not necessarily want to do. But
I remember that you had an offer from EA recently.
Yeah, no, that was very fucking funny. That was the funniest part was I didn't fully realize it, like what had actually happened. until like a week later, and I'm thinking back and going, wait a minute, like, these are the same people that called me up, and I remember like the phone call, like, I was in that house, that old shitty house.
Yeah.
I had my office in the second room, and I got an email from somebody at EA who said they wanted to schedule a time to talk to me, and I was really excited and thinking that maybe they wanted to publish something that I had done, Flash-wise or Gish-wise or whatever else.
Yeah.
And it was around the time where I was depressed. It was after Gish won the IGF. And I get up early for this phone call, and this woman's on the phone, and she's telling me that she wants me to work for EA in San Francisco. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to do my own stuff. And the whole time she's telling me, like, all right, well, you're obviously not serious about making games. You're a hobbyist, and, when you get serious about making games, give us a call.
Ouch.
I was like, fuck. And I remember thinking, like, wow, you don't fucking know at all what's happening. Like, you have no idea about what it means to be independent and why I'm here. But that was kind of the misconception of a lot of people, even in my life, like in my family. They didn't understand what I was doing. They saw me as a struggling artist who was poor, who seemed to be playing games all day.
Yeah.
Not until just recently, not until I bought my house, where I had this thing that showed that me being independent meant something, to most of my family, that they understood, oh, that's why he wanted to be independent.
Well, you were using, you sort of had a video of your mother and your niece playing Super Meat Boy. It was on a WiiWare console, was it not? Or
I think it was my sister and my mom. Yeah, that was at the old office.
I'm honestly not that familiar with your life, dude. Did that not, like, tell them something? You had this special thing where you could load up a game that you were working on and you could control it with a proper controller and whatnot?
Yeah, it definitely did. There were a few moments where I'd get a glimpse, like, and this is kind of like what I was talking about before, like, understanding how other people think and how they see and view things.
Yeah.
So, like, in my head, like, Gish won the IGF, blah, 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 and I'm thinking, wow, like, that means success to me. And everybody around me is like, oh, yeah, that's really cool. And then, like, and this is way before G4 got popular, I think it was like Tech TV or something, and G4 did, like, a special on indie games, and Gish was one of, like, the number one games on their list, and it was on TV. And then suddenly friends of mine are like, holy shit, like, because it's on TV. Like, it's on TV. That means you're somebody. Like, it's on TV. And I'm thinking, like, seriously? Like, it's fucking G4. Like,
it's the
hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, like, 100,000 of people fucking paid for my game, like, full price off of the website, and, like, that doesn't impress you at all. But if I'm mentioned in, like, a 5-minute segment on G4 TV, it's suddenly a success. But those certain things do make you valid in people's minds, and handing somebody an Xbox or Wii controller to play a game I made, even though I made lots of games, suddenly gives me weight. So, like, what I'm doing is meaningful in some way, and people obviously, care enough to let me make a game for their system. And, handing my mom and my sister a controller, I think, did change their perspective on what I did. Or even now, like, when I introduce myself to somebody and they say, what do you do for a living? And I say I make games, and they're like, oh, like iPhone, blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, yeah, I've made, I've worked on games for Xbox. And they're like, oh! You've worked on console games. And then I go on to explain to them, well, Steam's actually much bigger. And, like, like, if you go, oh, yeah, I put games on Steam. And they're like, oh, yeah, and Xbox Live. Oh! Whoa! Xbox Live? Whoa, big what?
We best back the hell up for the big man.
And then they always have misconceptions of that. They're like, so, like, Microsoft, how much they pay you in advance for that? How much they buy it for? And then I explain, like, oh, no, like, they didn't buy it, they didn't hire me. And then they're like, oh. And then it's not a big deal anymore. Like,
even though that means you get more profit.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. Sometimes I think it's an American thing. Like, like when the CD came out and I published it independently, I'd say like a good 65+% of sales were overseas and not in the U.S.
Yep.
Which kind of showed in the U.S. when you say you're independent, you don't get much respect for it. Like you really don't. I mean, even to the point of like, you get fucked royally tax-wise here. Like if you're independent, you're paying out the ass. And they kind of frown on it in a way, even though it's, the American dream. But you tell somebody that you're an independent anything, and they think that you're kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Unless you have been on TV. I should just go around with that little clip.
Let's going back to games. You've said that Triachnid is a game about caring and compassion. Does that mean it's your first is your first artistic game Coil, or is it Triachnid, or is it something that you did earlier?
I'd say the first, I guess, artsy, if you want to use the term,
yeah,
or whatever,
just the
expressive, whatever, would be Triachnid, because it was the first game after Gish when I was in that mindset of like, I want to push myself as an artist and try to use this medium to do something special with it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, I was doing some very basic stuff. Like I wanted to bleed out, like I wanted all the colors to be very gray tone. Like I wanted it to feel depressing. I wanted to do stuff with what I was familiar with. Like I knew how to set a mood with colors. I knew how to set a mood with music, and pacing. And I was playing around with a lot of that. And then I wanted to kind of set a mood with you having to care for this thing by actually moving it around physically. And then in the game, you have to care for another inanimate object. And you have this kind of like just slightly emotional attachment to this completely inanimate object, by just adding, just gameplay elements where if you lose your egg sac, you lose the game. So it's a bad thing and you need to keep it with you, and you're sad if it, falls into the acid or whatever else. Yeah. And those are very simple elements, but they were still interesting, and I enjoyed, playing around with it. I mean, it wasn't the greatest game, but it definitely pushed me in the right direction. Like, it kind of opened my mind to a few different things. And that was also around the time when a lot of different, after that I played this game called The Marriage, which was very abstract, which was really cool. And there was a bunch of different artsy games, like Passage and stuff like that around that time. And I thought, oh, cool, like a lot of people are making these games, and then it kind of became a joke, and I could understand why. Because it was just a bit too literal. Not literal, and like a bit too much. I don't know how to define it. It was a bit contrived in a way. And mostly because I don't think any of us really had a clear understanding of what we were doing and how we were doing it, but we knew we wanted to do it. And you had a lot of different people who were arguing in different ways and why their games were art and what made them art, and all these extremes. Like you had Tale of Tales doing really abstract, interactive art stuff, and it's still going on today, and it's getting better and better. Like, I played Dear Esther, and Dear Esther is an amazing game. And I feel like it does what the Tale of Tales people wanted to do for so long in, like, the perfect way. Like, I never really liked any of the Tale of Tales games, but I feel like Dear Esther embodied that kind of view towards video games, but in a way that I feel is just really, really good. Pretty amazing, I think. And it's cool to see all these experiments happen. But yeah, that was my first stepping stone into the more personal, expressive medium of video game design, I guess.
Now, going on to Ether again, because you talked about music, and I think that's a nice way to segue into it. Whose idea was it to have that musical progression where each planet you, I guess for lack of a better word, solved, sort of added its own instrument to the ongoing musical mix?
I honestly don't remember. It could have been Tyler. If he was here, I could ask him, but the game was made in 14 days, so it's hard to remember what was going on there. I don't remember. That one seems fuzzy, so it probably was Tyler's idea, because he was the more musical of us.
Yeah.
He actually, I think he played in like a jazz band, and he has a lot of family members that do a lot of music stuff. So I'm sure it was probably his idea.
I assume it was the same thing with the Time Fox mechanical voice that follows you through the game with the text messages.
Yeah, that came from Animal Crossing, because Animal Crossing did a similar kind of. At least that's how I thought that they did it. I just did it how they. I don't know exactly how they did it, but that was actually my wife saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, all recorded really fast and then modified. Yeah. And then William just made it so whenever it just literally read those letters, and if you listen not so close, you can actually hear a lot of the words, which is pretty cool. But either way, it came off sounding pretty neat. I like that audio effect. Yeah. It was also cool because I got to work with Justin in that, and Justin was actually a friend from high school, and it seemed really appropriate since a lot of the game was inspired by high school stuff.
Yeah.
That I hooked back up with my best friend from high school, and he's also a musician, and he does some really experimental music, and it seemed very appropriate for it, and he was able to kind of go with.
Yeah, you have a really good eye for these sorts of things, like the music that sets a very distinct mood for the game. I mean, you said you sort of give Danny some input, and then you sort of try to, I guess, edit it after he's done to make it match the game a bit better, and it really comes through on
usually,
things.
Like, if he does something and it doesn't fit, I can see where it might fit elsewhere. I'll either use it or whatever else. Like the music that he did for the original Meat Boy, he had already made. I was just pilfering his collection of music, and I was thinking this would be really perfect for this. And in a lot of ways, in early stages, if I have a piece of music that he makes, I'll actually design around the music.
Cool.
Which is pretty awesome. Like with Coil, I designed Coil with the music in mind from the very beginning. And I just prayed to God that Kata would let me use it.
You actually talked to him and stuff then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was, he let us use his music.
Right.
Yeah, he let us use his music for Cunt as well, which I thought it was going to be a total no-go, but that was music also that I had in mind from the very beginning, where I was like, this music would be perfect, and I'm playing it as I'm designing it, so I sure hope that he'll let us use it. And he's always been really cool about it, and totally was fine with it the whole time.
Excellent. I thought you just basically went for derivative works and being hoped that you wouldn't get sued.
There was always an element of that, but I always actually tried to contact. It's my I listen to a lot of music, and I'm kind of a music Nazi. I listen to a lot of music, and I think my music I listen to is the best. And in a lot of ways, I want to interact with these musicians because I really respect them, but our paths don't cross. And that's kind of the depressing thing about working in games, where I feel like none of the influential people who got me where I am, famous-wise, majority of people who got me where I am and inspired me to do this creatively are musicians or filmmakers who don't fucking play video games. They don't know who the hell I am. I'm never going to interact with these people.
Like David Lynch.
Exactly. Which I pray that one day, one day I'll have some kind of run-in with him.
Sundance, man, Sundance.
He doesn't go to Sundance. Maybe he'll, I don't know, I never talk about him in the movie, but I always seriously, when we were being filmed, I would think to myself, this movie does really well, maybe I should, drop a few, I really was inspired by David Lynch and Alejandro Jodorowsky, and maybe they'll hear from one of their agents that I like them, and they'll want to talk to me, or something like that. It's a stupid thing. But I can't get away from it. I want to talk to these people somehow, and Kata was somebody I respected, and he didn't seem super huge, so it seemed like he'd be approachable enough, and I was able to get to him through his publisher, record studio, what do they call it? And
label.
he was record label. He was super cool, and I had that minor interaction. Like I've had a bunch of minor interaction with people. Like Mike Patton is obviously an influential artist to me, and
I'd say to you as well.
I've had minor interaction with him.
Really? How did you get to meet Mike Patton?
Via email, through his record label. I believe when I was trying to make a portfolio for myself back in the day, I said, "Hey, I'll do work for free," and I had some minor contacts there. And then later on, I said, "Hey, if you ever want anybody to do like a video game for one of your videos, like a music video game," which I thought was really cool. I'm surprised that nobody really does it. I think he was working on releasing Peeping Tom.
Yeah.
And I actually talked to him via email and said, "Hey, I'll do this," and he's like, "Okay, how much?" And I was like, "Oh shit! Like I gotta figure out how I gotta charge this guy, and like what do people charge?" And I think it was something like 20 grand or something or it was like 50 grand for like an independent music video or something. And I'm thinking like, oh, I'll just say like 25 grand. He can afford that. And he was like, "No, I'm thinking more like 3. And I was like, "Oh, well, I can't live on that because that's going to take me a few months to finish this. And I don't really have any money, so I'm going to have to say, no, I'm sorry." And then that was my only interaction with Mike Patton.
Let's talk a bit about music. Which sort of bands or artists would you recommend people to get into that don't get to be mentioned much? I mean, I like quite a few things that you enjoy as well. I mean, if it wasn't for you and Gish, I wouldn't know about Stratosphere, and that led me to a whole bunch of different things. So could you just like?
And there are so many. I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of what I listen to, a lot of people know, like
Melvins.
Yeah, well, obviously Melvins. Any T-shirt you see that I'm wearing, that I listen to. But I like a lot. I like Arcade Fire. I like Arcade Fire a lot. I'm actually just looking through my music here. Let's see. Big Business. That's one that that's very attached to the Melvins. But Big Business is really awesome. I like them a lot. I like Baroness. I like Ben Folds 5. I'm still in the B's.
Yeah, alphabetical order.
Let's see. I'll just do the really standout ones here. Anything Mike Patton does, I'm usually listening to.
Fandomus
Godspeed You Black Emperor is awesome. I like a lot of like early '90s rock music, like Helmet and Nirvana, and all the grunge stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I'm in the K's. What else? Oh, Neutral Milk Hotel, Nine Inch Nails.
Did he sort of set you a similar sort of vision that he did with me, because he made everything by himself?
Trent Reznor?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's somebody I want to meet too.
Oh man. Well, he's a lot more keen on games, man. Yeah, I think he's got a bigger chance.
I know, and I know he's played my games. That's the thing that kills me. I know he's played my games through other people. Like I know he's played my games.
That's
cool. Yeah, it was very cool. I'd love to meet him. I'd talk with him. I don't know what the fuck I'd ever say to these people, but he was definitely influenced.
Until a few months ago, I never knew what to say to you.
Maybe I just need to interview him. But no, of course, yeah, Trent Reznor, one-man type show and clear vision. I respected everything he ever did. He always seemed like a really awesome, down-to-earth guy, and then even got just cooler as he got older when he started getting into the internet and, innovating, how music is sold and piracy and everything else like that. Totally respect the guy for everything, and if Trent's listening, give me a ring.
Oh man, you do know I'm not like some super famous guy, right? You're like the first person I'm interviewing.
I just have a feeling. I have a feeling about this. He's gonna somehow be listening to this, and he's gonna be like, "Hey, I want to hang out." Yeah, I mean, there's a shitload of bands. More obscure ones. Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum is a really great band that actually just closed shop. Sun. I like a lot of bands. I mean, those are just the ones that are standing out as I scroll through my list of albums. I like a lot of stuff. I like really expressive stuff too. Radiohead. I tend to like depressing music. A range of stuff. I use it as inspiration for a lot of the stuff I'm doing, to just kind of motivate me creatively, and it always did the job. Music and movies are my two main influences with games, and not in the literal sense, but in the more abstract creative sense.
Yeah, because they allow a very easy communication of emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, music's got it built right into the sound itself, so you can't help but be expressive with it.
Yeah.
Are there any things you want to say before I ask the few final quick questions?
No, I mean, other than you're asking great questions, and I appreciate you asking them.
Oh, thank God.
For the most part, that haven't been asked.
Oh.
And so that's, you done good.
Oh man, I was afraid of just asking a bunch of really crappy questions and having you be like, yeah, one sentence, next question. Right. So, these are the last few questions. They're inspired by the Proust questionnaire by way of James Lipton, who does the Inside the Actors Studio.
Yeah.
But they're not the same ones that he asks at the end of the show. I actually looked up the.
Are you going to ask them? Are you going to ask them like he would ask them?
Yeah. So just they're not the same ones he asks. So I'm not going to be asking you about your favorite curse word, for instance.
Okay.
What's your biggest strength?
What's my biggest strength? Oh, fuck. You're making me think here. What's my biggest strength? My biggest strength. Fuck, man. My biggest strength is to realize that I'm not that good and I'm going to get better.
What's your biggest weakness?
Biggest weakness.
I mean, you could go back to that thing, so I did cut you off. And
no, it's fine. It's fine. Biggest weakness. That's a more clear one. My biggest weakness is myself. I'm my worst enemy. And I can definitely get myself into trouble mentally if I allow it. Yeah, my biggest weakness is just my inability to have complete control over my thoughts and feelings, I guess.
What's the biggest thing you've learnt about life as an adult?
That it changes drastically as years go by, and that the opinions that you have now are not going to be the opinions that you have when you get older. At least if you're a progressive person and not some old idiot who just stays stale his whole life. But I think that's one.
What's the smallest thing that brings you happiness?
It's going to sound retardedly cheesy, but I'd just say seeing kids have fun, seeing kids happy and genuinely smiling and happy about things.
What's your favorite piece of art?
Zelda.
The first one.
The first one, of course.
What's your go-to piece of art that you come back to over and over again?
Well, that would be Zelda 2. Or not Zelda 2, but Zelda as well. Of course not Zelda 2.
Really? You go back to, weekly
I do.
Or monthly?
Not weekly or monthly, but at least once a year I'll play through Zelda.
Yeah, but, this is more not the thing that you go through again to re-experience, but, something that you play almost every day, or look at, or listen to every day, or once a week, or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, it could be right now, this past week, or it could be,
Yeah, it's definitely will be, it's different per year, I'm sure. Oh man, what's the one thing that I'm... Fuck.
It could be any piece of art, like a drawing, or music, or a game, or a film, or a TV episode, or something.
Well, I'd say right now, the album that moves me the most, that I listen to the most often, is Aeroplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel.
Sorry.
I'm probably gonna get shit on for that too.
Oh,
but whatever.
Yeah. Not to say anything bad about your taste in music. I haven't actually listened to the album. It's just
it's very it's stupid how it's like a joke now. But I'm telling you, that fucking album is amazing. Like, it's just a phenomenal fucking album. But it's just gotten so hipster chic, I guess. But it's true. I'm not gonna. I wanted to not say it because I know how taboo it is at this point, hipster wise, to say that that's but that is that's probably one of the most common albums that I play right now when I want to feel something, because it's just written in such an amazing way. I can't get away from it.
I've avoided that album for a few years now because people seem to have recommended it as a joke, but I guess you're going to be the one to push me over the edge on that one.
I don't understand why it's a joke. I really don't get it. It just seems like such a genuinely awesome piece of work. But I guess it's just, since it's so good and so many people like it, it's become this long running gag in hipster culture and indie whatever else. But there's a fucking reason why people like it.
Nice.
I've also been listening to Neon Bible a lot, which is now my favorite Arcade Fire album.
Again, another one that I've been familiar with but never bothered too much with. I'll give it a try soon.
That one's has a lot of religious stuff that echoes through Isaac, so I like listening to it around development time.
Oh, one more thing. Sorry. You said the classes in Isaac were based off D&D classes and the 4 suits in tarot cards.
Yeah.
How does each one link? Which is Isaac, which D&D class, and which tarot suit is he?
Well, Isaac is the fighter, and the fighter is the sword.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, so it's fighter, thief, mage, cleric.
Yeah.
And in Isaac, that's fighter is Isaac, cleric is Maggie.
Which tarot? Yeah.
And I'll go through the tarot one. And who am I missing? Judas is the mage.
Could you
and in
repeat
tarot,
those clearly?
it's okay. Cain is the thief. Isaac is the fighter. Maggie's the cleric. And Judas is the wizard or mage.
And in terms of tarot?
In tarot, mage would be the staff. Cleric would be the cup. Pentacle would be the thief. And the fighter would be the sword.
Cool. I guess this will wrap up the podcast section. I would like to say a few words of gratitude afterwards as well, if that's okay with you.
It's fine.
Okay. Thanks to you guys for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you soon.